Welcome to the live stream. If you're watching the repost, this live stream is going to be about teaching the game using National Mah Jongg League rules. We're going to wait for some viewers to come and then we'll get into the presentation. I have a PowerPoint ready, so that will be visible in the repost. If you have any questions, be sure to write comments in the comment section below and I'll be happy to answer any of those questions. Also, there will be some links under the video for some handouts that I'll be sharing about and also some links to resources. Okay, welcome to the live stream. Thanks for coming. Hi Elizabeth, how you doing? We're going to be talking about teaching the game. I've been wanting to do this for a little while. I've never done a presentation online before, so I'm hoping this goes well. If you have any questions while we do this, let me know. Or if you have any suggestions on how to make it better, let me know that too. Okay, so last night you said that it got cut off. I didn't, when you mentioned that, I didn't know which video you were talking about. So I'll have to look at the repost and check it out. But if, I think I won 2 or 3 games last night, but let me just see if I can pull up the video and see how long it is, because it should be 2 hours long, but there could have just been technical difficulties with, no, it's 2 hours long, so I don't know, let me see here. Okay, well, I'll check it out later, but I did look at the live stream. The last game cut off. Okay, well, there's no way for me to look at it because I didn't actually do a double recording. Whenever I stream, YouTube records it automatically, but I don't do an actual recording. And because of this situation, I'll probably start doing a double recording so that I have a backup. But after the live stream, if there are technical problems, that's kind of on the YouTube side and I don't have visibility into that. The video is 2 hours and 3 minutes, so I'll look at it and see what happened. I'm not sure. But I'll look at that video and I'll see where it left off and make notes of what happened if I remember. Thanks for letting me know. Welcome to the live stream, everybody. Say something in chat so I can say hi. This live stream table talk is going to be focused on teaching the game. I was just going to share how I do it, and then hopefully everybody, if anybody's a teacher, will be able to share their ideas as well. But I thought I would do a little presentation here of what I've been through. I've been teaching this game since 2005. So I've been teaching a long time, and my teaching methods and materials have changed over the years and have gotten better and better. And I have a really successful or high ratio of good players. Some people just won't get the game. That's just kind of the way it is. There's always going to be some people who just don't really, it doesn't fit into their thought processing, so they may not ever get the game. But the methods that I've developed over the years really have a short learning curve for most players. And so I just thought I would share about it. So let's see. Okay, so let's see here. Let me just check out chat here. Elizabeth was sharing that there was a cutoff in last night's live stream, so I'm going to check that out and figure it out. From now on, I'm going to do a double recording, so I'll always have a backup. I've been trusting that YouTube will capture everything, but apparently the video last night got cut off. Thank you, Elizabeth. I have learned a lot about YouTube and how to do recordings, so things are improving, and I also have a really neat iPad stand that I want to get, but it's like, I don't know, $300, so I've been saving up for that. But I'm really hoping to get that so that I can do an overhead view of the tiles that I discard when I play solitaire, so that there's always a continual video of discards instead of just fading in and out. I still have to learn how to do a dual screen, so I'm still learning, but thank you so much. Hi, Diane. So we have Elizabeth, Alieska, Diane. There are other viewers here. Say hi in chat. As far as teaching the game, when you say hi, let me know if you teach the game or if you're interested in teaching the game. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. I'm hoping that it'll be about an hour long, and like I said earlier, I haven't done this before, so I'm not sure if we can fit everything in 1 hour, but I'm going to try. So let me know in chat if you teach people how to play the game, or if you're just interested in teaching the game and need ideas on how to get started. Anytime I look to the side, that's because I'm checking out chat. So I'm kind of multitasking here. Welcome to the live stream. If you've just joined, we're going to be talking about teaching the game using National Mah Jongg League rules. If you are a teacher already, please feel free to comment in chat the way you like to do things. Also, if you are just thinking about teaching the game, maybe share about your whatever is keeping you from proceeding. Maybe you just need ideas or how to get started or what have you. Let's see. So Alieska says you want to teach some neighbors who have expressed interest. Okay, perfect. Anybody else want to comment on teaching the game, whether you're just getting started, you are curious about it or nervous about it, or if you already teach and just want different ideas. I'm hoping that what I share here in this presentation will help get you started. And then also I'm hoping that in chat we'll have some ideas come up from participants. So please, if you feel the need, just write in chat your ideas and comments. If you don't know how to do that, there should be a live chat or a top chat label on the lower right hand corner under where suggested videos are listed. So if you can find that, you'll be able to click on that, and then you'll be able to see chat so that you can participate through live chat. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started unless anybody else has any input. I'll give you a few more seconds, and then we'll get started into this presentation. And I plan on this being interactive, so I'm going to try to do the presentation and keep an eye on chat as we go. Okay, so I guess we'll just, here we go. Let's see. Hi, Chris. You won't be able to stay the whole hour, but you'll catch it on tape. Yep, there'll definitely be a repost, and I'm not doing a recording on this one, but there will be an automatic repost on YouTube. So whenever you have to leave, just go and look for the video, and it'll be there in about an hour after we stop the stream. So let's just go ahead and get started. So I just want to cover the way that I teach the game. As I said a few minutes ago, I've been teaching since 2005, so my methods and handouts and such have kind of changed over the years, and I think that I have a really good track record for people being able to play the game after even one lesson. So what I'm going to show you is based on those methods. So if anybody has any comments about how they teach, feel free to type them in chat, and we'll talk about it and share ideas. So the first thing that you have to do when you get ready to teach the game is you got to come up with a plan. So when you teach this game, it's complex, okay? It is the hardest version to teach. Once people learn how to play it though, once they learn the fundamentals, I should say, then the game is easy to play. The strategy kind of comes with time when people play the game. They learn how to make decisions quicker, make better decisions, improve on strategy and things like that. That comes through time. So when I teach, this is the lesson plan that I use. I hope that you can see this. I'll wait for the video to catch up because there's always a lag. Okay, so here's my lesson plan. Can you all see that? Hi, Barbara. Can everybody see the lesson plan? I'm hoping that the visual is clear and it's not too small. But when I teach, as I said a while ago, I teach the whole game in one session. I do what's called a boot camp. I call it a boot camp because it's very intense. It's a 4-hour class, and I teach them from the background of the game, including history and the tile symbolism. Okay, Alieska, I will have a link to a PDF version that you can download. So we're not going to talk specifically about these in detail. This is really more about logistics of teaching the game. So I'm not going to go into great detail here. So just for you to get an idea of putting together a lesson plan. You want to be able to put together a plan that's going to walk a person through the game. So I teach them everything from fundamentals and then through even the Charleston and then playing the actual game in one session. Some people teach multiple sessions where they break it out and they don't actually learn how to play the game until later sessions. So that's one thing that I do differently. I teach them the entire game in one 4-hour session. Then if they choose to hire me for additional sessions, that's when I focus on strategy. I call that a skill builder lesson, and I have a lesson plan just like this for those as well. So let's see, one person, okay, Peggy's taught one person at a time. Okay, that's interesting. Do you guys play multiple hands and then they play a hand? Like, for example, do you play 2 hands and they play 1 hand, or how do you handle that idea? So I'd be curious about that, because that can be a good way to personalize your instruction. But because it's a 4-player game, I require 4 players, and then I'm the teacher. So we'll get into that a little while later. So the first thing you got to do is come up with a lesson plan. And when you come up with a lesson plan and then do your lesson, you can streamline that or improve on it as you go and as you learn your own skill set, your own personality, your own ability to play and teach. It'll change over time, but just start with a plan. Always have some kind of a lesson plan so that you can follow the same process. And this is also a great way to replicate what you're doing, so that if you come up with a process that is successful, you can share it with other people. So this is how I do it. So after you come up with a lesson plan, then you've got to figure out how many sessions you're going to offer. So I'll wait for the screen to, there we go. Okay, so when I teach, I break it up in the 4-hour session. I start with the first hour covering the fundamentals, like the history of the game, what the tiles are, why they are the way they are, and I try to keep that pretty short. Oh, let's see. So Peggy's commented, she starts with them watching you play a game So there are more than one people there. So you have a learner, and then you have people who already know how to play the game. So you have them observe a couple times, and then you have them play a hand, and then you probably coach them. Is that right? I've seen people teach that way. If you and that's totally fine if you teach that way. The way I like to teach is in multiples of 4. And if you do it this way, the way I'm sharing today, you can scale it. But if you do it the way Peggy's doing it, that works for one player at a time. But if you're interested in teaching multiple people, you need a different kind of a plan and methodologies. So I'll get into how I do that here in a few minutes. Actually, my lesson plan, I don't know if any of you have seen my lesson video series, but I use my lesson kit for that series, and that's how I teach. And like I said, it's had really great success. When I teach people how to play in this boot camp, they leave knowing how to play the game. Yep, Peg, I will have a link to a PDF version of the lesson plan in the video description after this live stream. And the lesson plan basically is for this lesson kit, and I'll show it to you in a little bit. So anyway, let me see here. Jan says she teaches a couple of hours each week. First time, learn the tiles and then make hands from the card. So I call that category modeling. That's cool. That's a good idea. That's part of my lesson plan too. Then you teach with open hands. So play by play with coaching, it sounds like. Yeah. Okay, I think that is probably the most common way that the game is taught. The way that I teach is a little unorthodox, I guess I should say. So just to backtrack over a 4-hour session, the first hour I teach the fundamentals, and steps 1 through 9 coincide with my lesson plan. Hour 2, I do open play with coaching. This would be an example of my skill builder if they already know how to play. Hour 3 would be strategy with open play, and then hour 4 I teach variations. So that would be an example of how to break out a lesson plan. Peggy says it's only for friends. Then you send them to watch the videos. Okay, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. So and I have that as a resource actually, because it's a great way to supplement whatever you're teaching. So here's an example of how you can do 2 4-hour sessions. If people want to have maybe not as intense of a lesson plan, you can do 2 4-hour sessions where you do basically the same boot camp, but then you get into decision making and strategy on a deeper level in session 2, and then you can break that out hour by hour. And I found that to be really helpful. A lot of centers like rec centers, JCCs, and continuing education programs offer 6 2-hour sessions. So I also have an example of how to break out the lesson plan in 6 2-hour sessions. One thing that you want to keep in mind though, as far as the number of sessions, is that can impact your rate. And we're going to get into rate later, but the more you need to consider drive time, and then setup, breakdown, the actual lesson, and all of that is going to impact your rate. So the way that I have worked this out has made it so that my rate is where I want it to be. And you just want to make sure that you keep all that in mind. So we'll talk about rate in a little bit. Okay, so Peg says they had 4 2-hour sessions. Okay, that's pretty good, 2 4-hour sessions. So yeah, as long as you cover the fundamentals and then you offer some skill building, I think multiple sessions is really great for skill building to be included. If you do one session, you really got to teach the entire game, of course. Okay, so any questions about lesson planning, and then also sessions? If nobody has any questions about that, we'll go on to talk about locations. Okay, so we'll just go on to locations then. I'll wait for the presentation to catch up to me here. Okay, so I've done lessons in a number of venues. I've taught people how to play in their homes. Those I call private lessons, private sessions, and I charge more for home in-home lessons. Usually it is $10 more per player, and we'll talk more about rate later. But the reason I do that is because thank you, Peg. That's so sweet. But I increase the rate because usually private lessons are smaller groups. If you have smaller groups, you're going to have less tuition, typically, because you're narrowing it down to probably 4 players. So you're not going to make as much as a whole. The bigger the group, the more you make, of course. So, and of course, if you're not interested in making money or charging people, then none of this will apply, or some of it will apply. But so just take that part of the equation out if you're not interested in charging. But if you are interested in charging, you can get paid for your effort. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And we'll talk again more about the actual rate in a bit. But you want to consider where you're teaching. If you're teaching in a home, I call that a private lesson, and I tack on $10 per player per session for that offering, because you are providing an intimate lesson and focused attention. So the next type of venue that I've taught in would be a library or like a rec center. And that type of location, I offer a standard rate, because they typically have a room set up for you, so you don't have to worry about getting a table out. You don't have to worry about usually you don't have to worry too much about distractions and noise and things like that. So the expectation is set for you, knowing what you're going to get when you get there. Sometimes when you go to someone's home, the setup is not quite conducive to teaching. I've been in places where I've tripped over things, and the home maybe wasn't, let's just say it wasn't conducive to teaching. So there's that element that you have to think about when you teach in people's homes. So you can teach in someone's home, consider making that a private session and adding to your rate if you do charge. And then of course there's teaching at a library or a JCC or a rec center or something like that. Yeah, you know what, it's interesting. Peg says people perceive value for what they've paid. Okay, and someone had a lesson, gave a lesson in their home. You went to the instructor's home. So in that case, since the players are going to your home, I would not charge them a premium for that. I would give them a standard rate. So if you're going to their home where you don't know what it's going to be like, you've got to teach in a, there's some spontaneity in that. I think there's some fee increase involved in that because it's stressful. So consider that. When you go to a JCC, a rec center, or a church, or something like that, everything is set up there for you with chairs, tables. They may even provide refreshments, which is nice. Then you don't have to worry so much. So I just do a standard per player tuition. And then, of course, we have teaching at a restaurant. That's usually how I do it from my meetup. I find a bar or a restaurant that will allow me to use a back room, and I just reserve that room, and we go early. I tack in an hour into the agenda so that we have lunch and get to know each other. I usually talk about the history of the game during lunch, and then we break into the 4-hour session where I teach them the game. So that's how I do it at a restaurant. So these are the different venues that I have taught at that all work. All 3 of these venues work, but they each have a different kind of environment. So make sure that you keep that in mind. When you're at a restaurant, you know, there could be noise and distractions there that may draw people away, or, you know, depending on the time of day and such. So keep that type of thing in mind. Okay, so after you have pulled together your plan, you've decided how many sessions you want to offer, then you nail down a location, then you need to talk about or think about the number of players that you're going to teach. And what's going to be really important here is you got to determine what you can handle. So if you're just starting out, start with 4 players. Or actually, I like Peg's idea. I think it was it Peg or Peggy who said that they teach 1 player at a time. Let's see here. All right, well, either Peg or Peggy, I can't remember, I'm sorry. But they taught 1 player at a time. Maybe even start there, just having your friend or family member, what have you, observe, and then maybe sit with them and sort of shadow them, or allow them to sit with you and play along with you. That's a great way to kind of get started. Oh, Peggy. Okay, great. So Peggy was talking about that she has them observe, and then they do kind of a coaching or shadow play or something like that. If you're just getting started, that might be a good way to get started. Once you're comfortable with that, then I like to teach in multiples of 4. So start out teaching 4 players, and then you can scale from there once you are comfortable. Of course, the more people you teach, the more interruptive it's going to be, because everybody has questions, and all those questions can kind of affect the lesson plan and your timeline. So keep that in mind. You've got to be prepared to minimize certain questions, or maybe have them wait until a break or what have you. You've got to really learn how to control your timeline when you have multiple players. And any additional 4 that you tack on, if you're scaling it out, then that kind of timeline impact on timeline increases, because the more players you have, the more questions you're going to have. So you have to learn how to manage the timeline with the questions that you may or may not have, and that includes people who don't get the game. So sometimes you've got to make a decision to leave a player behind. And then what I like to do is, if that does happen, if there's a little break, I might pull them aside and just say, okay, I perceive that you're having a little trouble grasping such and such in the last piece that we went over. Do you have any questions? And maybe give them a little extra attention during that time. Mary says she teaches 1 at a time as well, and you have them watch, observe. Yeah, that's a big part of the game. Some people do learn by watching. Some people learn by doing. Some people learn by watching. So you just kind of have to figure out what their best way of learning is, and then go from there as well. So the way I do it, though, is I teach with 4 players, and I have a 4-player minimum, and then I scale it out with multiples of 4. So for example, if I have 4 players and then 2 more people sign up, I won't hold the lesson until I get 2 more players, so we have multiples of 4, and I'll tell you why. If you teach 4 players, it's a 4-player game, so that's the most ideal situation, because then you can focus on those 4 players and you can teach them the game, play a game, talk about strategy and what have you, with each of them being one of the players. if you have more than 4 players, I use a buddy system so that it basically condenses 8 to 4 because they sit 2 on a side at a table and they act as 1 player. I call them partners. So I would have, I mean, it gets a bit cozy, and I even mention that during the lesson. I say, we're going to get cozy here, and I tell them why, because we're going to use a buddy system, and basically that allows me as an instructor to teach 8 people, but in reality it feels more like you're teaching 4 because they're buddied up. So you would teach them the game and whatever you're covering at the time in pairs. So you have 1 table with 8 people and 2 on each side of the table. If you have 12, you would have a table of 8 and a table of 4. And then you would, of course, have to go in between 2 tables. So that's a little more difficult. If you have, let's see, so that's, if you have 16, then you would have buddied up, you'd have everybody buddied up on 2 tables. So then you would have 16 players and you would be teaching 2 tables. That is the most I've ever done. And that's what leads me to the next idea, and that is the number of instructors. When you, for me, what I have found of what I can handle, for every 8 players, I need a helper. Because when I taught 16 people how to play by myself, and I'm able to do it, but it is hard work. It is really hard work, and also it impacts the ability for all 16 to learn, especially when you break them out into individual tables. So what I like to do is for every 8 players, I ask for a helper, whether it be a friend or someone from my Mahjong group, and I share the rate with them. And that's another consideration, and we'll get to rate in a little bit. So for every 8 players, I add an instructor. So if we have 32 players, then I'm going to have 2 assistants or what have you. I don't know. I didn't work out the math on that. But for every 8 players, I recommend that you have an assistant. And when you do that, I recommend that you do, let me see here. Okay, I was just checking chat here real quick. When you do have an instructor, make sure that you have or meet with them maybe a half an hour before, or maybe the day before, or just as long as it's before the lesson, and let them know what you expect from them and how they can help you. Show them your lesson plan, show them your methods so that they know what your plan is, because you wouldn't want them to derail the lesson and go on their own agenda. That has happened before, not with an instructor, but with a player. So if you have players, for example, who have maybe had a lesson from somebody else, or maybe they've been playing the game and just want to improve their game, so they decided to take a lesson, they may derail unintentionally your lesson. So when that happens, you just need to pull back the reins and say, okay, that's going off my lesson plan. If we can just table that for now, or maybe talk about that later. We're going to be covering that, for example, later in the lesson plan. That might be another thing. Like I've had many times where a player will ask a question that points to something that I'm going to cover much later in the lesson. I'll say, I can tell this game is for you because you're already thinking ahead to maybe strategy, and we're going to cover strategy later in the lesson, so we'll answer that question later. So make sure that your lesson plan is not getting derailed either by questions or by your instructor helper. So make sure that you're staying on your lesson plan and you're not jumping all over your lesson plan. Stay with your lesson plan. That's really important, because if you go off that lesson plan and you jump ahead to strategy when you're working on fundamentals, you're going to leave people in the dust. They're going to be confused and frustrated. So try to stick to your lesson plan and make sure that if you have an instructor there helping you, that they're also on the same page with your lesson plan and how you do your lessons. Okay, so that's a little bit about instructors, and I would give them some cut of the rate and just agree upon whatever that might be. Any questions about the number of players, scaling it out, having instructors that are helping you? Any questions about any of that? I'll give y'all a minute to come up with any questions if you have any questions. Okay, we'll go on to handouts. So you know what? I think right now, let me just show you really quick my lesson kit. So I'm just going to kind of try to show you it. Let's see. I have it in this little stationery box. And this is how I teach. So in this lesson kit, and I'm just showing you, I mean, I'm not doing this to sell you on it. I mean, you can purchase it if you want to. It's on my website. But I'm showing you this too so you can get an idea of how you can do this yourself. So the first thing in the lesson kit is an little instruction packet. And it's basically has everything we're talking about here, actually, and a script. So basically, when I teach, I say the exact same thing every time. And I scripted it out. I typed out everything I say when I teach, because I say the same things over and over when I teach the game. So I have a script in there, and I tell anyone who purchases this lesson kit that they can use whatever they want, or they could put in their own words, but that's kind of how I do it. And the script coincides with the lesson plan. So you have the lesson plan, just like I showed you in the screenshot before, and you can see that the lesson plan, let me just go backwards so you can see it. So I'll wait here for a minute for the thing to catch up here. Okay, so the lesson plan is numbered, and the script coincides with these numbers. Also coinciding with the numbers are envelopes, and each of the envelopes has strips in it that coincide with whatever it is that you're teaching. So for example, when I teach the players about the colors on the card, in the one envelope here, I have it marked 5-1, one suit, and then I have strips, one for each player, that coincide for one suit, and it's got one color on it. Let me just show you here if you can see that. One color, one suit, and then I pass each strip to each player or partner pair if I'm teaching multiples of 4, and then I have them build whatever is on that little strip. And of course I tell them the strip has nothing to do with the game except that it's teaching them how to read the card. So when you play the game, you don't use those strips in the game, but they're just a teaching tool. So I give them that strip, and then I have them build one suit. So they get into the tiles and they build a hand using that one strip. So when I teach, I don't even give them the card. I don't have anybody looking at the card. That comes like 2 hours into the lesson, because that's one of the hardest things for people to learn, is how to read the card. So that's why I go into these teaching tools where I teach them one suit, and then I teach them the mixed suit. So this is the strip for mixed suits, if you can see that. So then I give everybody a strip for the mixed suit, and then I have them use the tiles and build it. And invariably somebody gets it wrong, and then you correct it, and people learn from all those situations. Now, when you are teaching like this, using this method, anytime that you're focused on one player, all the other players need to be focused on that one player, because then they're learning 3 times as much than if they were focused on themselves only. So it's really important to draw everybody in to the player that you're focused on. Everybody is focused wherever you're focused, and that really takes their learning up several notches, because they're learning from all the different situations that come up with each player. So instead of focusing just on themselves, they're focused on learning opportunities for everybody. So once everybody goes through the mixed suit opportunity or mixed suit situation there, part of the lesson, then we go into the dragons and the matching dragons. So you can see there's a D in there. I don't know if you can see that. But there's a strip for each type of situation on the card, where you have one color is one suit, two colors means two suits. Then you have dragons that match, and then you have dragons that don't match. So each one of these envelopes has sort of examples of how they can use the tiles to build that kind of situation. So once we go through all the different suits, then we do the categories. So I have strips for every category on the card. And I give everybody at the table a strip, and then I have them make a hand from that category, and then we talk through it. So I have, for example, once I give everybody a strip, and then I have everybody build a hand from the card, and then we'll talk about each hand. And that's where you want to draw everybody in to the one player talking. So everybody's attention should be on that one player, because there's going to be questions that come up about the category, about the parentheses, and you can really use those questions and situations that come up, whether they be corrections or just questions about the card. They can learn exponentially more than if they just focused on themselves. Jan says, I like the idea of assigning strips. You can set them up so people aren't always trying to use the same tiles, which can sometimes happen if you're using the card and having them pick one. Yeah, that's a good point. Absolutely. That's a really good point. Okay, so that's what all the envelopes are for, and that's what these numbers are all about on my lesson plan. The envelopes coincide with the lesson plan and the numbers. So let me see here. I also go into category modeling. That's what I call that. And then we go into we go into the Charleston. So let's see here. We talked about the players. We talked about instructors. Okay, so I want to talk really quick about handouts. So when people learn differently, one way that people learn is by taking notes. And that's fine. I always tell people, though, everything I teach you, I'm going to give you in a handout. So you don't have to take notes unless that really helps you learn. If people don't need that to learn, it's best not to take notes. Because if you provide them a handout with everything that you're teaching them, then they can focus on playing the game, and they won't be fiddling with a pen and paper or using their iPad or their iPhone, taking notes. And it pulls people away from the game. It's a distraction, and it also takes time because they've got to write down and transcribe what you're saying onto paper. So if you just think ahead and have everything that you're teaching in a handout, they don't need to take notes. So I give them core strategy, which is this little guy right here, and I made it small intentionally so that it fits under their card. So here's the card, and you can see it's basically the same size as the card. I just turn it like that so they can keep it under their card and refer to it while they play if they need it. So this is a 3-panel card. You open it up and it's got the strategy that I teach with Strategy by Wall. That's core strategy, and I have a link to that in every video for American Style. And then also I have the same kind of card for when to stop the Charleston, which is another great strategy. So this would be after you do fundamentals. For fundamentals, I really don't have a handout because fundamentals are on the back of the card. they have fundamentals on the back of the card already. And also you can refer them to the league for this book here. This is kind of the guidebook per se. Sometimes there are not going to be some rules in there that they have put in newsletters every year. So I always recommend that players buy their card from the league as opposed to getting it from a fundraiser, because then they get the newsletter, which has FAQs, and sometimes they establish rules between published dates for that booklet. So that booklet, how much is the card? Are you talking about this, Elizabeth? Or are you talking about the guidebook? Okay, Jan also let's see. Peg was saying that she prints them out on plain paper and gives them away. Yep, that's great. Everything that I have on my website, and even these materials that I use, are common, what's it called? Creative Commons. So you can, as long as you're not making money off of it, you can reprint. I don't care about that. I just want to provide what what has worked for me for people, and if it helps you and if it helps people learn the game, that's what I'm all about. If you want to purchase these tools, I do sell them in 4-packs, I think for $12 or something like that, and then shipping, of course. So you can buy them in packs of 4. I print them on cover stock, so it's sturdy and good for long-term use, as opposed to being on paper where it gets kind of tattered and torn and wrinkled. So if it's on nice heavy cardstock, it's really good for long-term use. Let me see. Somebody asked, do you sell those cards that you show? Yes, I do. I sell them individually in 4-packs, packs of 4, really for teachers, but you can, purchase a 4-pack and then give them to your friends, or you could all decide that you want one and then share the cost or something like that. And then I also have variations. Now this one is a bit controversial, but let me explain why I do it. So here's the inside of my variations card. Let's get it in there here. So you can see there are quite a few different variations in there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are really 8 in there, and then how to play 5 and how to play 3. So the thing about variations, which are also house rules, is some people are purists. I call them purists. They like the game in its purest form, and so they play strictly by league rules. But there are some groups that have house rules. For example, some play atomic. If you don't know what atomic is, you can get my variations card, and I explain it in there. Atomic is a popular variation played in Florida, and a lot of groups play it here in the Atlanta area as well. But the nice thing about covering variations in your lesson, towards the end, I would teach I would teach the fundamentals first, then skill builders, including strategy, and then at the very end, maybe in your last session, if you're doing multiple sessions, I would go into variations. I personally play by the rules. We do not have any house rules. We don't do atomic. We don't double the value of hands when we roll doubles. We don't have a hot wall, no cold wall, or anything like that. Those are all house rules and variations of the game. So when I teach the purest form of the game, and on the last session I share about variations, because when these players go to play with other people, established groups, I want to make sure that they're not caught off guard and they don't feel stupid. So if they're aware of the most common variations of the game, then they'll be confident about their knowledge. They'll be confident and say, oh, okay, I've heard of that. I play by the National Mah Jongg League rules, so I haven't played with that particular house rule, but I'm willing to play you know, if that's the way you guys like to play. But basically the bottom line is I like to teach variations because I want them to be aware. And when I do teach them, we don't actually play a hand with those variations. I just read them because I just want them to be aware of it. And in my opinion, I prefer to play by the rules, the National Mah Jongg League rules. So I don't actually go into the house rules in an actual hand. So let me see, Elizabeth, how many different ones do you have? Are you talking about how many variations are in there? I have 8 of the most common variations. I think the only variation that is not on here that is probably common is doubles, or whatever you want to call it. And that's where people roll the dice, and if whoever rolled the dice to break the wall rolls double, they double the value of the hand for that hand. So you can call that house rule doubles. I don't have that in here. And the reason I had to pick and choose is because there's only so much real estate. There are lots of other resources online that people can go to find other sorts of house rules, like Sloperama. And I'll provide a link to his website in the video description after this particular lesson. So does anybody have any questions about handouts? I like it in this form because it's small. So people will leave with a set of these. And I think it helps people feel like they're getting value. So they're paying me for my time, but they're also walking away with something in their hand. If people walk away with something tangible, I think that it helps them feel like they've gotten great value. So hi, Josephine. Welcome to the live stream. Let me see how many, okay, extra cards. I'm sorry, Elizabeth, I'm not sure what you're referring to as far as extra cards. I'm not sure if you're talking about these. But anyway, you can write in the comment section if you'd like to clarify. Okay, so I'm going to go on to rate now. So when you try to figure out your rate, you want to try to put a value on your time, because everything that you do costs, whether you put a dollar value to it or not. I mean, your time is valuable. And that's one reason why I decided to start charging for lessons, because I was doing more and more lessons and I was doing them for free for my meetup. But it was taking away time from my family and time out of my weekends. So I decided to start charging, and that, appeased my husband, and it also allowed me to build into my mahjong hobby. So that's why I started to charge a rate. So the standard rate that I have found, I did some research. Let me ask, let's see, you were at a table on Friday when one player decided you needed to play with no Charleston. She could leave in 10 minutes. It appears her regular group. So they just play a game with no Charleston with 4 players. That would be, that's the way all Asian versions do it. They don't have a Charleston, so it's definitely a quicker game. Okay, so back to rate. The standard rate that I have found is $25 per hour. So however you work it out with your sessions and your players, you want to make it so that you're earning $25 per hour. And that's how I came up with my tuition. I would, let's see here, let me pull in my website really quick so you can see my tuition. I think I have it on here. Hold on one second. Lessons. Yeah. Okay. Let me wait for this to catch up here. Okay, so here is my website, mahjongcentral.com/lessons. So I have a small group with 4 players is $50 per player. So this would be a private small group. The smaller the group, the higher the tuition. And basically what that does is the more players you have, the lower the tuition, and that encourages big groups, because the bigger you group, the bigger the group, the more the higher return you're going to get. So the 1 4-hour session is $50 per player. For Boot Camp Plus, which is where I do 2 4-hour sessions, that's $95 per player. And then Boot Camp Max is 4 4-hour sessions, and that's $180. And then when we scale it out to 8 players, it's the same sessions, 1 4-hour, 2 4-hour, and 4 4-hour, but the tuition is lower because you have more players. And then we have the large group, as you can see here. And then I also charge a travel fee because in the Atlanta area, it takes time to go places because of traffic. I mean, there's a city, let me see, where I give lessons. It's like 2 or 3 cities away. It takes me 2 hours to get there, and it's horrible. So I charge a travel fee for that. So consider travel fees with your tuition so that you're getting paid for your time, and include setup and teardown as well, because sometimes that can take time also. Jan, you can buy the cards, you can buy the handouts and the lesson plan or the lesson kit on my website. There's on my website there's a tab for products. So when you get a lesson kit, everything comes printed on cardstock, so everything is really sturdy, and I provide it in a stationery box. So everything is in this stationery box, so it's easy to travel with, and it's cut to that size, so it's manageable. It's easy to carry. So anyway, when you can consider a rate, consider the standard is $25 an hour, and you just kind of multiply it out depending on how many people are in your group. The more people in the group, the lower the tuition can be. So keep all that in mind, and you're welcome to use my sort of plan. Just go to my website and look at lessons and then see how I've broken it out, and it's really worked well. And I have not had any pushback from people on my rates ever. No one has ever questioned it. So you can go higher or lower depending on your area, depending on the cost of living in your area or what have you. But this is how I do it. As far as resources, I'm sorry, I wanted to also talk about marketing. So I really don't market myself too much, but when I teach at the JCC, they have a program or a member booklet that they distribute, and so people learn about the lessons through the JCC materials. So if you teach through a rec center, a JCC, a synagogue, or what have you, they usually do the marketing for you, so you don't have to worry about it. Another way, of course, that you can market your lessons is through Facebook. Start a Facebook group for yourself, your own Mah Jongg Facebook group or your personal Facebook group. Use social media to share about your lessons if you want to start doing this for pay. And then also you could start a meetup. When I started my meetup, and I offer lessons on Sundays, and I offer a lower rate, a lower tuition to members of my meetup as kind of a perk. So that's another thing that you can do, is start a meetup and do lessons and charge your members a member rate. Anybody who's not a member would pay a higher rate, and that would encourage people to join your meetup, and also build your meetup while you're also making a little bit of fun money through offering lessons through your meetup and charging tuition. Also, another way that you can share about your lessons is to register with Where the Winds Blow. There are other sites that you can register with. I believe Sloperama has a teacher list, and I believe Mah Jongg Maven also has a teacher list. So those are just a few resources where you can go and work with other places to help get the word out that you're offering lessons. Also, you can go to my Facebook group, and you can go to my website, which I'll have links to all these things under the video. And then let's see, that was my Facebook group, my YouTube channel. Use my YouTube channel videos to help your players sort of study at home. If you guide them to all those videos and have them do Charleston modeling, Charleston chain reaction, sprints, and all those things, that can really edify what you're teaching in your own lessons. And then, of course, you can refer to my website as well. So that's it. That's my my presentation, and we made it in a little over an hour, and we actually started, I think, about 10 minutes in, so we got through the presentation in an hour. Does anybody have any questions about teaching the game and about this particular presentation? That kind of concludes the session unless anybody has any questions. I'll have links under the video to where you can get the handouts if you want to just get those in 4-packs, or you can get a lesson kit which comes with the lesson plan, the script, it comes with the associated tools, and then it comes with a 4-pack of each of these handouts. Oh, Josephine, great. I'm so glad you came. Thanks, Peggy. Okay, well, I guess if nobody has any questions, let's see here. Peg, should I get the interest before you buy the kit? Well, I mean, I would definitely see if you have, you're welcome, Mary. I would definitely wait. It takes me, I usually have about 6 kits ready for shipping at any given time. Right now I only have 2. So depending on when you hit me through the cycle, it may take up to 7 days for you to get your kit. But what I would do is find interest, in multiples of 4. Try to get multiples of 4. Even having a backup list is good, because sometimes people back out and then you're stuck with 3 and you have to teach and play, which is hard to do. But if you have 4 interested people who've committed, then you can purchase the kit and schedule it out maybe 2 weeks. And that way you have a week to get the kit, a week to get comfortable with the tools, and then you can do your lesson. Another thing that you can do once you get the tools is watch the lesson playlist, because I use the tools in that playlist, and that's basically how I do the lesson. The videos go through my lesson kit. I use my lesson kit in the videos. So if you want to get an idea of how it's used, just watch those videos and you can see how it's done. Thank you, Elizabeth. I hope that you all have gotten some ideas on how to get started and what all is entailed with teaching. It's more than just pulling people together and pointing to a hand. I think, in my opinion, that's the hardest way to learn the game. When people tell you what hand to play, it's very myopic. There's a much better way to do it. And in my opinion, this has proven to shorten the learning curve for most players. I'd say 90% of the players, it has shortened their learning curve, and they can leave one session knowing how to play the game after having one session using this method. So if nobody has any questions, I'm going to go ahead and conclude this live stream. I'll give you just a few more seconds here to write in the comment section if you have any questions. but I'm happy to learn everything I share. And if you get this kit, you're welcome to copy and reproduce, as long as you're not, you know, selling it or anything like that. If you're just reproducing the handouts or what have you, that's totally fine. And I can even give you a PDF version so that you can print them easily instead of just making copies. So I'm more than happy to give back. I'm all about giving back. People have given to me, teaching me how to play the different versions I know, and I want to pay that forward, and this is one way I can do that. So thank you everybody for coming. Thank you for participating in the chat. If you're watching the repost, go ahead and put any questions that you may have down below, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Again, there are going to be links in the description under the video so that you can refer to everything that we've talked about in this live stream. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, consider subscribing. Click the bell when you do so you get notification for when I post new videos or for when I go live. That way you won't miss an opportunity to maybe learn how to teach or learn a new strategy, learn a new insight to the game that could give you an advantage at the table. I'll definitely put a link to the handouts actually, I think the link to the handouts is already there. But anyway, between now and the next live stream, may all your picks be keepers.